A fatal shooting on a North Carolina college campus. A graduate student charged with the murder of his professor, both victim and suspect of Chinese descent. What led to the attack? Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo's trip to China is coming to an end. She says she didn't expect to resolve major issues ahead of the visit, but it seems something may have changed her tune. A new pact between the U.S. and the Pacific, granting special powers to American ships in the highly contested region. And labeled as mentally ill for an anti-Chinese regime stance. A 19-year-old activist shares his story, trapped in a Chinese psychiatric hospital.
I'm totally normal.
What do you think of the accusation? Let us know below and subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. New details on the fatal shooting in North Carolina. Authorities charged the suspect with first-degree murder on Tuesday. The suspect is named Tai Chi, a grad student at the University of North Carolina. The victim, Jijie Yan, was his advisor. Yan was shot dead in a school building on Monday. University police asked students to hide inside immediately.
There we see the police are just lining up all down, and you see fire trucks, EMS, there's what looked like armored vehicles coming in as the FBI, ATF, everyone came in. And it's just all kind of shocking, like this is happening here.
In less than 2 hours, authorities arrested the suspect in a neighborhood near the campus. Now, police say the motive of the shooting is still unknown, though according to news outlet The Independent, Chi had complained about the victim in earlier social media posts. The victim headed the lab and served as an associate professor at the university. He took the job there in 2019 and is a father of 2. The suspect did not enter a plea. A judge ordered him to remain in jail without bond. If convicted, he faces life sentence in prison without parole. The suspect's next court date is set for September 18th. Does the U.S. still hold the upper hand in the U.S.-China economic battle? U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo is addressing tensions during a meeting with Chinese officials, stating that a reported Chinese hacking of her email account, quote, erodes trust. Here's a closer look.
So I had no expectation that on my first visit here and my first meeting with Chinese officials that we would suddenly resolve specific issues.
The exchange comes after Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo described China as uninvestable in recent days. On the other hand, Beijing has repeatedly called on the U.S. to not decouple with China and has shifted certain policies to emphasize the appeal of its market, industrial systems, and workers. Why the change?
Communist China is treating the Biden administration like a lackey. And now that they are facing their real estate empire imploding and an economic depression, they suddenly have an interest in speaking to America. And of course, it's on commerce and trade.
Though it's not just China looking to ramp up trade, during her trip, Raimondo zeroed in on a goal to reduce misunderstandings between the superpowers, especially when it comes to export controls.
Now is the time to ask China to make concessions. They need our help, and we need to make sure that we get something important in return.
But when China requested that the U.S. ease export limits and its ban on investments in new tech, Raimondo refused, citing national security concerns.
The administration should be very tough in their approach to China, and I'm afraid they will not be.
The White House's intent for a thaw in U.S.-China relations has sparked criticism from U.S. lawmakers. Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael McCaul, said the decision is at best naive, but also dangerous. But officials have also made a distinction.
We're not targeting China. We're targeting actions and behavior which undermine U.S. national security.
When it comes to the significance of Raimondo's refusal to lift restrictions,
I think it's very important to Communist China. It's not as important to us because we hold the upper hand here. And if she can just hold firm, then we could make progress.
Early in July, President Biden described China as a ticking time bomb. That's as China's economy sank into deflation in July amid a slew of other economic woes.
A strategic win for Washington. The U.S. now has the authority to enforce maritime law around a tiny Pacific island country. The nation of Palau recently signed off an agreement with Washington, allowing U.S. Coast Guard troops to patrol inside its exclusive economic zone without a Palauian officer on site. This follows requests from Palau's president asking for more U.S. backing to push back on Beijing's aggression in nearby waters. He added that China's targeted actions might be a show of retaliation. That's because Palau is one of just 13 countries that still recognizes Taiwan as a sovereign nation and maintains formal diplomatic relations. For decades, the Chinese Communist Party sees Taiwan as its own territory and has vowed to take it by force if necessary. That's despite never having ruled it. The UK is staying clear-eyed on China.
We have to have a pragmatic, sensible working relationship with China because of the issues that affect us all around the globe.
That's the word from British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, alongside of a Wednesday meeting with his Chinese counterpart in Beijing. He noted that he foresees opportunities for the two countries, despite disagreements in several areas. Among them, the national security law Beijing imposed on Hong Kong, Chinese sanctions on some British lawmakers, London's restrictions on Chinese investment, national security fears, and concerns about Chinese aggression toward Taiwan.
Of course, we are also aware that occasional disturbances arise in the China-UK relationship.
Cleverly is the first senior British minister in 5 years to visit China. While there, he also met with Chinese Vice Leader Han Zheng. The meeting drew criticism from some UK lawmakers who view it as a sign of British weakness. Others argue a more positive relationship with China could benefit the globe. As China's economy struggles, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo is in the country for a fourth day of talks. Will her trip lend a hand to China's troubled economy? And how is her reality check impacting China's economy? NTD's Chris Spears spoke to Antonio Graceffo, China economic analyst and author of Beyond the Belt and Road, China's Global Economic Expansion, for more.
Antonio Graceffo, thank you for joining us.
Hey, good to see you, Chris.
Antonio, talk to us about the overarching state of China's economy.
China's economy right now is about the worst I've ever seen. We have FDI is at a multi-decade low. Exports are down. Factory activity is down. We're seeing price deflation. We're seeing factory gate price deflation. Very high youth unemployment.
And what role do souring U.S.-China relations play in all this?
Well, I think part of the reason that the Chinese economy is in trouble is because of the U.S. restrictions on investment, increasing restrictions on investment, increasing restrictions on Chinese investment in the United States, trade restrictions, and the chip ban. I think those are all playing a role.
Now, Su Yun, a senior analyst at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, has said that China's economic predicament was created by the CCP itself. Explain that for us.
Absolutely. First of all, as soon as you have a communist economy, as soon as you have a non-market economy, you're going to have economic problems. By definition, communism causes market distortions. And we know that free markets grow faster and create a higher standard of living for people than any other type of system.
And what's China looking to do to take care of this economic situation?
I am not sure what China's move will be. What I will say is that over the past just 3-4 months even, they've intensified the rules like the foreign policy legislation, the national defense legislation, intelligence legislation, counterterrorism legislation. And all these things together are just making it less and less attractive for foreign companies to open in China or to take investment in China, which is driving away the FDI, driving down the job creation, driving down the exports. I just don't see how CCP policies are helping the economy. They're hurting it.
Antonio Graceffo, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
A plan to rescue China's faltering economy. Leaders in Beijing want to boost sluggish Chinese stocks. To do this, they've decided to limit the number of new companies allowed to go public. Supposedly, by reducing the influx of new firms, more funds can be directed toward existing company stocks. This increase in investment is anticipated to drive up stock prices. The surprise move from Chinese authorities aims to revitalize a sluggish stock market and bolster investor trust. But some analysts say it might bring the opposite effect, potentially hurting China's economy even more. They say limiting what companies can go public could also restrict their access to capital. And with less capital means more difficulty for businesses looking to expand, ultimately leading to fewer jobs. Analysts add stock performance doesn't depend on how many are listed. Instead, it changes based on the overall health of the economy. Beyond boosting stock performance, China's faltering economy is in desperate need of another kind of rescue, more babies. And Beijing is racing to make that happen. First, the Chinese Communist Party says it wants to make preschools more accessible. That's to incentivize people to have more kids by keeping preschool providers from making what the state deems excessive profit. And just last week, authorities in the city of Xi'an used Chinese Valentine's Day to send text messages to locals, wishing them love, marriage, and childbirth. The messages reportedly also read, quote, "Continue the blood of China and share the important task of rejuvenation." Last year, China's fertility rate, the average number of babies a woman would have in her lifetime, dropped to a record low, just 1.09 births per woman. That figure comes alongside China's first population drop in 6 decades. Amid the disappointing data, a country in eastern China is offering couples a cash reward if the bride is aged 25 or younger. But young Chinese couples are citing problems like low consumer confidence and economic worries as reasons not to get married or have children. If you aren't pro-Chinese Communist Party, you are mentally ill. An imposing statement directed at a freshman college student by Chinese doctors. The 19-year-old had been detained inside a mental health clinic for months, all because he joined a protest against China's top politician. Here's the story.
I'm totally normal. I never had any mental illness.
Zhang Junjie got in one of China's top-tier universities last year. His college life kicked in while Chinese citizens were struggling with lockdowns and strict anti-virus policies. But for Zhang, his fate took an unexpected turn after he stepped into a crowd of demonstrators at his school. Little did he know that demonstration would snowball into one of the largest civil movements ever to erupt in today's China.
Last year, on the night of November 27, 2022, as well as 8 a.m. on the 28th, I went to the front of our school's main building and joined 2 demonstrations of people who were holding sheets of blank paper protesting against the CCP and Xi Jinping's zero COVID-19 policy.
The blank paper movement spread quickly across the country, targeting Beijing's draconian pandemic policy. Dubbed the zero COVID-19 strategy, it employed a unique and strict approach, laying out rules unlike the measures found in other countries. It aimed to entirely eliminate cases of the virus inside the country, with extensive mass testing for swift illness detection and full lockdowns to stop transmission.
After 8 a.m. on November 28th, I was taken by several school leaders and teachers to a conference room where I was placed under house arrest for an entire day.
Zhang's travel spiraled from there. On 3 occasions over the next 5 months, Zhang was sent to a mental health clinic.
Then plainclothes police and doctors told me, if you do not support the CCP, you are sick. And if you do not love the country and the Communist Party, this is what will happen to you.
A warning, some viewers may find the next section of Zhang's story disturbing. Zhang explained he had no history of mental health concerns, but he was forcibly injected with psychiatric drugs like olanzapine and aripiprazole daily while detained. He later developed a number of health problems, which he says he still suffers from today, including pain in his abdomen near his liver, as well as other symptoms.
They insert 2 needles into your ears and neck, then electrically shock you again and again. I saw a patient who was shocked to the point where his ears and nose were bleeding.
Zhang's most recent detention lasted for 2 months. By that time, he said he had already made up his mind to leave the country. He later applied to study at a New Zealand university and fled China. The costs of defending human rights inside China have far exceeded Zhang's expectations. He says he doesn't fear the communist regime.
Chinese authorities are urging residents to amp up their protection measures against expected floods. That's as a hurricane is forecast to hit China's Guangdong this Friday. Chinese authorities held emergency meetings last Saturday, warning that torrential rain could drench areas across China and that rivers could overflow as a result. China's southern Hunan was hit with torrential rain the past weekend, while northern Hebei province also suffered. A resident posted a video online about what's happening.
It started raining again. The water level has reached my knee. This is my factory.
Weather experts haven't figured out the path of the upcoming hurricane, but Chinese authorities said it would dump rain on southeastern coastal regions like Fujian and Zhejiang. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what to look out for in our second half. From tech giant Huawei to social media platform TikTok, Chinese lobbying is in full swing to buy influence in America. Are major Chinese apps reshaping the fabric of American society from the inside out? And how is the China lobby posing a political risk to Washington? We welcome Rex Lee, cybersecurity advisor at MySmartPrivacy, back on the show for details. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epic TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.